Tomorrow morning, right here on Parliament Hill, former Governor General and Special Rapporteur David Johnston will face a grilling from members of Parliament, the majority of whom want him to step down. Johnston is set to testify for 3 hours before a committee investigating foreign interference in the 2021 and 2019 elections. Let's bring back our front bench panel to talk about what we can expect. Miriam Monsef, Melanie Paradis, Kathleen Monk, and Laura Stone. Melanie, I'll start with you. Do you have any set expectations for tomorrow? What do you think we're in for?
Well, 3 hours is a lot of time, certainly a lot. You can cover a lot of ground in that period of time. And I hope that parliamentarians keep their questions. This should be like a legal interrogation. We don't need at this point to be doubling down on any personal attacks or amping up aggressive questioning. I think they need to ask really tough questions, but in a very boring manner, frankly. There's no need to try to get more clips out of this because the content is going to create itself. This is an individual who at a press conference spent 5 entire minutes unprompted talking about his adventures in Tremblant with Prime Minister Trudeau when he was younger. He doesn't need to be egged on to share more stories. I think just give him the platform. Let him talk for 3 hours and a whole bunch of new Easter eggs are going to come out when he does that. So the best thing that parliamentarians can do tomorrow is create an environment where David Johnston just wants to talk and does a whole lot of it. And then I think we're going to learn a lot. I hope.
Laura, Melanie kind of flags an interesting dynamic, right? And that is the degree to which the opposition in this scenario decides to go after Mr. Johnston, alongside some of the more eyebrow-raising things Mr. Johnston has said in the past, right? I think what Melanie's referring to is kind of the answer when he was trying to say, I'm not that close to Justin Trudeau, I'm not that close to the Prime Minister as it's being framed, and he offered this very long explanation that included how they were neighbors at the bottom of the mountain in Tremblant, and things, just sort of things that came off a bit tone-deaf, but he was trying to make the point, hey, we're not BFFs. Other video has surfaced since then from the past, which describes a very different relationship, so I imagine he's going to be quizzed on that. But the tone and tenor of it will be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think both sides need to kind of tread cautiously here. I mean, the opposition can't for 3 hours be screaming at David Johnston. I mean, he's an 80-year-old man, and until recent months, he was very beloved by Canadians. He was our Governor General. People have fond memories of him. Of course, if you're according to polls and talking to the opposition, that's a bit tainted now, but they can't come in and just scream at the guy. I think they have to give him, as Melanie mentioned, some space and some tough but relevant questions for him to explain himself. And then on David Johnston's part, I think he needs to show some self-awareness here. I think he was a little bit unprepared, it seemed, for some of those questions that he had in the press conference after he released his report. He's obviously going to face some tough questions about why he's hired a crisis communication firm to help him. Again, obviously he's going to face questions about a public inquiry and why he's not recommending calling one. But I think he kind of needs to step back a bit and really explain to people, go through step by step why he's not doing it, but be a bit aware about why many Canadians are concerned here and why many have been calling for a public inquiry until now.
Two things have kind of happened, Miriam, and both Laura and Melanie referred to them since the last time we kind of heard from him publicly upon the release of his report. The first is that the House of Commons voted on a motion introduced by NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. The opposition overwhelmingly voted in favour, the Liberals against it, that asked him essentially to remove himself from the position of Special Rapporteur. And the second is that he hired, and Laura referenced this, Navigator, a crisis communications firm, to help him navigate, I guess, if I could say tongue-in-cheek, what's going on. What do you expect from him tomorrow?
Well, for Mr. Johnston to appear before the committee and speak for 3 hours is a testament to his commitment to this country. Despite all the content that folks are anticipating to make from his appearance, I hope that first and foremost, he is treated with the dignity that he deserves as an honorable Canadian who's served this country for decades. I think the government has an opportunity here to recognize that the confidence of Canadians has been shaken in democracy and tap into the think tanks and organizations, the civics and the Samaras, the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians, to help bolster Canadians' confidence in democracy. And I think the opposition has an opportunity here, first and foremost, to understand the problem. There are problems that the challenges around information sharing, for example, within security and intelligence agencies. They came up during the response to Afghanistan 2 summers ago. They came up during the hearings with response to the convoy here in Ottawa, and they've come up again. What I'd like to see, and what I hope we all can look forward to as part of this long drawn-out effort, is, okay, so this is an area where there's clearly challenges. How do we measure progress on it? Who do we need to call back to committee in 2 months from now to tell us where we are? And in order to do all of that, to be constructive, the opposition has to first and foremost take the briefing, understand the problem. Don't put on the noise-canceling headphones that my 3-month-old has and just scream that there's a problem and it's broken. Actually try to understand the problem, because the real danger here, both in the mudslinging and the challenges around this whole issue, have the cumulative effect of undermining democracy. And who wins when Canadians are at each other's throats, throwing mud at each other? The very same folks who want to interfere in our democratic processes from the outside.
Last word to you, Kathleen.
I think that's what I'm watching for, too, that last point that Miriam just made, that actually I hope that the opposition and the government, for that matter, question Johnston about the substance of the report, particularly the intelligence briefings. What we learned in his report is that there are these binders of intelligence floating around the government that no one can track, no one can find, and apparently no one's even reading. So I would want to get to the bottom of that. That's what I'm watching for. I'm also hoping that committee members really grill David Johnston on his choice to move forward on the public hearings. We know that there are some legitimate concerns, fear and trepidation on behalf of some communities coming forward and speaking publicly. So why he thinks and has argued that he should go forward these public hearings when we know that people might be too fearful to talk.